Hey, sleepy wanderer. Tonight we glide gently backward across centuries of stone and sand, into a world where pots mattered more than politics, and mud held more promise than gold. Tonight we follow the humble, rhythmic, and surprisingly soothing daily life of a Roman potter. The fire hasn't been lit yet. The kiln sleeps as soundly as the chickens. You rise early before the buzz of sandals in the street, before even the gods finish dreaming. The morning is cool, damp, and gray, the air laced with a whisper of ash and dust. You stretch your aching back beneath a sky still undecided about its color, and you blink away sleep with the slow certainty of someone whose bones have done this 1,000 times. This job, after all, is not glamorous. You don't wear togas embroidered with laurel wreaths. Your hands are cracked, permanently shaded in the colors of the earth ochre, terracotta, and the kind of brown that never quite comes off. Pottery isn't about elegance. It's about repetition, about mud, about knowing exactly how many breaths to hold while centering clay on a spinning wheel without flinging it into your neighbor's face. And no, you probably won't survive this. Statistically speaking, the ancient Roman Empire wasn't exactly known for ergonomic safety standards. Between lead pipes, collapsing amphitheaters, and the occasional disgruntled client hurling a cracked cup at your head. Well, let's just say you might want to dodge left more often. But don't worry. Right now, you're just a sleepy artisan at the edge of dawn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's oddly comforting to know where this little potter now opened the workshop door. The scent hits first. Damp clay, last night's smoke, and something faintly herbal. Maybe it's the olive oil you spilled last week. Or maybe it's the mouse again. You shuffle across packed dirt to check the kiln. It's cold, of course. The embers have long since given up. You crouch beside it, brushing away a sleepy centipede, and mutter something half prayer, half complaint. That kiln's as temperamental as a minor deity and twice as likely to explode. Still, it's the heart of your world. Your tools are exactly where you left them. Wooden paddles, looped wires, and a flat stone with your initials crudely etched into the corner. You never label your better tools. That's how they disappear. The village still sleeps. You can hear soft rustles, maybe the baker stretching dough in the dark, or that kid who always insists on racing goats before breakfast. The silence is comforting, predictable. Like wet clay before the first touch. You grab your gathering sack, woven from brittle flax and patched with whatever fabric you could barter. Time to fetch water. The potter's day always begins with a slow haul water, clay, breath, repeat. It's meditative if you forget the back pain. The path to the stream is familiar. Down the slope, past the fig tree that refuses to bear figs, over the creek where frogs have regular debates at full volume. Your sandals squelch in dew, and you realize, once again, you've stepped in something not entirely mud. Probably goat. The amphora you carry is one you made yourself. It's not perfect. The lip is slightly uneven, and there's a faint thumbprint near the base. But it holds water like a champ. Better than that fancy vase your cousin made with all the swirls too proud to use, too ugly to sell. You hum as you dip it into the stream, careful not to spook the little fish darting past like gossip. As the jar fills, your muscles remember the rhythm. Lift, balance, return. It's not heroic, but it's yours. Historians still argue whether most Roman potters worked alone or in collectives. You? You like solitude. Or maybe solitude likes you. Either way, you're used to it. On the way back, the sky lightens. A pale blush bleeds into the horizon. Somewhere, a dog barks at nothing and everything. A neighbor waves half-heartedly too early for real enthusiasm. You nod, shifting the weight of the amphora against your hip. Back in the workshop, you line up the water jugs with a sigh of satisfaction. A good day begins with clean water. That's what your mentor always said, right before tripping over his own kiln bricks. You light the lamp above the bench, a flicker of orange warmth spreading across worn wood and half-finished bowls. One still has your lunch from yesterday in it. Dried lentils and a suspicious smear of fish paste. You decide not to investigate. There's a sense of peace in this moment, the quiet hum of routine, the promise of shapes not yet formed. You run your fingers through a bowl of dry slip, feeling the powder cling like memory. Everything starts here in stillness. No one will remember your name. Your shards might be dug up centuries from now, puzzled over in air-conditioned museums. But here, in this breath before the first knead of clay, you're part of something steady, unchanging, eternal. You yawn. The day hasn't even begun, but already your body knows. This will be another long one. Another day of dirt, smoke, and splinters. Another chance to turn earth into usefulness. The kiln looms silent beside you. Soon, you'll feed it. But not yet. The water is lined up in amphorae like obedient soldiers, each one sloshing slightly as if sighing at their fate. You rub your lower back. It's already protesting, and glance at the sky, which is now stretching from gray to something resembling apricot. Time to begin the next quiet battle. Surviving the morning without tripping on your own sandals. Your first real task, hauling water, again. Because surprise fetching it is only step one. Now comes the second water run, this time not for drinking or clay mixing, but for washing tools, wetting cloths, and damping down yesterday's powdery mess. Ancient Roman potters didn't just work with water, they practically bathed in it. Not that it helped. You still smell like burnt soup and wet rocks. You lift another amphora, this one wobblier than the rest. A hairline crack snakes from the handle like a curse. You'll patch it, eventually. For now, you carry it with the cautious grip of someone who knows what a shattered pot sounds like when it lands on bare toes. Down the slope again, past the fig tree, past the same frog-filled creek, where the frogs now seem louder and somehow more judgmental. You think one of them might be winning an argument. You fill up fast and head back, but not fast enough to avoid the corner where the road dips just a little too sharply. And there it is. Rome's favorite trap, a casually placed stone, perfectly angled to twist your ankle and your dignity. You stumble, arms windmilling, water sloshing, and manage to recover with all the grace of a sleepy stork. No one sees you. This is both a relief and an insult. You kind of wanted someone to witness your recovery pirouette. Oh well, by the time you reach your workshop, the street is waking. A boy with soot-stained cheeks trots by carrying firewood. A woman hums a tuneless melody as she sweeps her doorstep with more drama than necessary. You nod at her. She squints at you like she might not be entirely sure you're not her cousin. It happens. Back in your workspace, you wipe down the table with a wet cloth, watching as ancient dust transforms into gritty soup. The amphorae are now spaced neatly around the room. It's oddly beautiful, the symmetry of utility. You've developed a kind of pride in how even your containers behave. You use one to splash water onto the clay bin yesterday's batch, drying too fast in the warming air. You stir it with your arm, elbow deep in sludge. It's like petting a swamp, a really judgmental swamp. Fringe historians have theorized that early Roman potters whispered to their clay for better results. You tried that once. The clay did not respond. But you did get weird looks from the baker's apprentice. With the water distributed and your ankle mildly offended, you prepare for the morning's second test. Carrying amphorae to your neighbor's kiln to preheat them. Not the pots, the amphorae themselves. Some clients like their water jugs tempered. Gay. You think it's a scam, but who are you to argue with superstition or money? As you shuffle toward the neighboring yard, you pass other potters setting up their stations. One is already bragging about a new glaze recipe that's supposed to look like crushed emeralds. You know it'll turn out brown. It always does. You greet them with a polite grunt. That's the standard Roman potter's hello. It roughly translates to, "I'm tired, your technique is wrong, and I didn't ask for your opinion, but good morning." You carefully nestle the amphorae near the fire pit, warning the kid stoking the coals not to nudge them. He nods solemnly, then immediately forgets you exist. Typical. On the way back, you pass the shrine near the workshop entrance. It's small, just a clay relief of Minerva tucked into the wall, with a burnt offering from last night still smoldering. You bow your head. Not from fervent belief, but because you know better than to tick off a goddess in charge of crafts, especially when your whole career depends on not having your kiln explode. Again, back inside, you finally get a moment to breathe. You pull out your stool, which creaks like a cursed tree, and sit. Your muscles sigh louder than you do. Across the room, a jug drips lazily onto the floor. You let it. The rhythm is nice. You take a swig of diluted wine, more water than grape, but it does the job. Breakfast? A piece of old bread and a smear of olive paste. Not thrilling, but then again, neither is your job. That's the whole point, remember? Still, there's peace in it. Repetition. Predictability. You know exactly how your day will unfold. At least until a stamp breaks or a neighbor steals your firewood. Historians still argue whether Roman amphorae were more commonly used for wine or fish sauce. You've personally used them for both. Just not the same one. Not after that incident with the spoiled garum and the guy who still won't look you in the eye. By now, the sun is peeking into the workshop, sending slow-moving beams across the dust. The light glints off shards on the shelf, some cracked in the kiln. Others were dropped by clumsy clients who then tried to pretend it was decorative. You lean back, stretch your arms, and take a long, slow breath. There is clay to dig, firewood to chop, pots to stamp, stack, and fire. But for now, in this brief window of in-between, you are simply a potter surrounded by quiet effort. Tomorrow will look exactly the same, and maybe the day after that, But that's not failure, that's peace. You gather your digging tools. Nothing fancy, just a short-handled shovel, a woven sack, and a chipped wooden tray, and head toward the clay pit just beyond the edge of the village. It's not glamorous, this walk. It's hot. It's uphill, and it smells faintly of something between crushed nettle and persistent goat. But it's necessary. No clay, no pottery. No pottery, no livelihood. No livelihood, well, let's not dwell. The pit itself is a gash in the earth, maybe 10 feet wide and twice as long, with walls that shimmer slightly when wet. You know this place better than you know most people. The good spots, the crumbly ones, the patches where the clay turns a surprising ochre or blushes red in the right sunlight. Today, it's a pale gray perfect for common wear. Not the kind nobles drool over, but the kind that holds lentils, wine, and dreams of not cracking during dinner. You slide down the incline, feet skidding slightly on loose soil. There's an art to it, just enough speed to look confident, not so much that you land face first. You've seen both. Once from the same person, twice in the same week. You stab the shovel into the clay with a satisfying squelch. It yields slowly, protesting in thick, sticky globs. The texture is dense, full of promise. This is what Roman civilization rests on, not marble statues or grand aqueducts, but thousands of small vessels made by thousands of small hands. You fill your sack in slow scoops, pausing occasionally to flick away curious beetles, or to stretch your back before it stages a rebellion. The sun creeps upward, heating the back of your neck like a warning. Quirky historians claim some potters whispered poetry to their clay as they dug it, believing it made the vessels more agreeable. You once tried quoting Virgil to a particularly stubborn patch. It responded by collapsing entirely. You've stuck to humming ever since. A fly buzzes near your ear. You ignore it, mostly. It's part of the soundtrack now, along with the creak of your shovel, the squelch of wet clay, and the occasional sneeze from the shepherd 2 hills over. He's got allergies. You know this because he reminds everyone, constantly. The sack grows heavy fast. You drag it from the pit with both arms, muttering a few choice words in Latin that your grandmother would not have approved of. The walk back is slower. The clay seems to gain weight with every step, like it knows where it's going and is having second thoughts. You pass the workshop of an older potter who waves without looking up. He's half blind but insists on perfect symmetry in his pots. Claims he can feel the balance. He probably can. You still think he's just showing off. Back at your place, you dump the sack onto the kneading table with a thud that echoes slightly. The smell hits raw earth, a little metallic, and somehow nostalgic. You run your hands through it. This is good stuff. Smooth. Sticky, but not too wet. The kind that shapes easily and holds its form. You can already imagine the bowls it will become. The lamp bases. The jars for salted herring. You begin the filtering. A tedious process, but necessary. Small stones, bits of root, even the occasional insect husk. Everything must go. You sift it by hand first, fingers working like a tired crab, then pass it through a loosely woven reed mesh. It clogs constantly. You grumble. That's part of the ritual. Historians still argue whether Roman potters used metal sieves or woven ones. You've seen both. You use whatever doesn't break that week. By now, your hands are slick with clay. Your sleeves, pushed up to your elbows, bear the brunt of the mess. You look like a statue in progress, half-formed, slightly annoyed, and badly in need of lunch. Once filtered, the clay must rest. You mound it into a low basin and cover it with damp cloths, reused tunics mostly. The kind no one would dare wear in public again, not even to a bad play. This resting period, called aging, makes the clay more workable. Potters say it allows the particles to align, to relax. You relate. Deeply. While it sits, so do you. On the stool again, the same one that threatens to buckle every third Tuesday. You pick a piece of dried slip from your arm and flick it at a lizard on the wall. It doesn't move. Either it's sleeping or it has achieved enlightenment. You take a moment to sketch a rough design in the dust. Just a simple jug with a twisted handle. Functional. Maybe decorative. You haven't decided. You probably won't. Half your pots evolve mid-spin anyway. The village is louder now. Someone's arguing over stolen figs. A child shrieks with delight or horror. It's hard to tell with children. The air smells faintly of bread baking and something charred. Hopefully not yours. You check the clay again. Still too wet. You poke it with a stick, just to feel like you're doing something. The stick breaks. You pretend it didn't. The waiting is part of the job. The patience, the ritual. You can't rush the earth. Well, you can, but it cracks. Like people. You wipe your hands on your apron once white, now enthusiastically not, and glance toward the kiln. Soon, it will roar. But not yet. Right now, it's just you, the resting clay, and the lizard who might be judging you. The clay is ready. Or at least, as ready as you are. It's rested beneath its damp cloth, soaked up its thoughts, aligned its mysterious particles, and emerged looking exactly like yesterday's batch. Which is perfect. That means it'll behave, probably. You scoop a hefty lump onto the work table with both hands. It lands with a soft thwop, like a sleepy toad. Then comes the part that sounds more relaxing than it is. Kneading. No, it's not like bread. Bread yields. Clay resists. Your palms press into the mound with methodical force, rolling it, folding it, pressing again, like you're attempting to convince the earth to be reasonable. You rock forward and back in a quiet rhythm. It's not elegant. It's not Instagram-worthy, but it's grounding. Literally. You pull out pebbles as you go, tiny, treacherous saboteurs that would love nothing more than to explode mid-kiln and ruin half your batch. One particularly smug pebble sticks stubbornly to your thumb until you flick it into oblivion. You imagine it plotting revenge. Historians still argue whether ancient Roman potters added sand or grog, ground up old pottery, to their clay for strength. You use whatever the day gives you. Sometimes it's grog. Sometimes it's just disappointment. A neighbor passes by your open doorway, glances in, sees you covered in earth, and nods respectfully. Pottery has a strange kind of status, not glamorous, but solid. Everyone needs pots, even emperors, especially emperors. You hear they break things often. Once kneaded, the clay goes into manageable chunks. You shape them into rough balls and cover them again. They'll wait their turn. For now, it's time to prep the wheel. It's not a fancy wheel, just a solid stone slab set on a central post, balanced carefully and spun with a foot treadle that squeaks like an offended duck. You check its movement smooth enough if you ignore the occasional wobble. You've named the wobble Augustus. It appears without warning and ruins everything. You sit down, square your hips, place a lump of clay dead center, and begin to spin. Your foot pumps the treadle in a steady rhythm. The wheel hums beneath your hands. This is where it starts to feel like magic. As the wheel spins, you cup the clay between your palms, slowly pulling it upward. Your fingers are wet, your sleeves pushed back, your brow furrowed in gentle war. The shape emerges slowly. First a squat cylinder, then a narrowing neck, and finally the suggestion of a lip. A bowl, a cup. Even you're not entirely sure until it's done. You press a thumbnail into the base to add a faint groove. Your mark. Subtle, but present. If someone in the future finds this pot, you want them to know this was yours. You made this. And then, inevitably, disaster. The next lump of clay refuses to center. It wobbles violently, threatening to eject itself. You fight it. It flattens in protest. You mutter, nudge, coax. It spins again, this time too enthusiastically. And then, as always, Augustus the wobble makes a cameo. The clay folds in on itself with a rude plop, splattering slip onto your chin. Congratulations, you've just made a very expensive, useless pancake. You sigh. A joke you once heard comes back to you. What's the difference between a potter and a philosopher? One shapes clay into vessels. The other shapes nothing into arguments. You're still not sure which is more frustrating. The cleanup is easy. Clay forgives sometimes. You scrape the mess aside, center a new lump, and try again. This time, it behaves. A gentle cup, wide-mouthed, meant for wine or maybe honeyed water. You set it gently on the drying board. It wobbles slightly. You ignore it. We all wobble. Around you, the workshop breathes. The sun climbs. A fly buzzes lazily. The breeze wafts in through the door, bringing with it the scent of thyme and the distant tang of sea air. You think briefly of quitting, of moving to the coast, of selling seashell necklaces. But then you remember. You hate sand. You make 3 more vessels 2 jars, 1 oil lamp base. Each emerges a little differently, despite starting the same. That's the trick of the wheel. Sameness in motion, uniqueness in result. You're reminded of people. And goats, especially goats. One final batch for the morning. Smaller bowls, meant for a client who insists on elegant simplicity, which is code for I want them plain, but if they're too plain, I'll blame you. You shape the bowls with extra care. Smooth rims, consistent depth, minimal flair. You almost fall asleep mid-spin. Your body knows the motion so well now it doesn't need you. It just hums along. Like muscle memory possessed by a very tidy ghost. Fringe scholars claim some Roman potters worked with assistants called figline young apprentices who helped with prep and delivery. You wish you had one, if only to hand you that sponge you just dropped on the floor and now have to awkwardly stretch for without falling off your stool. You reach it. Barely. The stool creaks its disapproval. Eventually, Your drying board is full. Rows of half-finished vessels, gleaming faintly in the angled sun, like an army of quiet soldiers preparing for battle. You stand, stretch, and feel about 80 years old, which, in Roman artisan years, is pretty standard. The morning's labor ends not with a dramatic flourish, but with a wipe of your hands, a quiet exhale, and a glance toward the drying pots. They'll need to sit for hours before decorating and longer still before firing. For now, you rest. You earned it. The wheel has stopped spinning. Your arms are sore, your back is making strange bargain noises, and your stomach has entered into mild protest. It's time for lunch, or at least something that passes for it in the world of Roman pottery. You step outside, blinking against the midday sun as if the sky has no business being this bright. The smell of charred barley cakes and overcooked lentils drifts from a neighbor's hearth. Someone somewhere is singing, badly. You retreat to your usual spot, a shaded bench beside your workshop, partially protected by a crooked awning that's more ambition than fabric. It's a good place. Quiet, close to the pots, but far enough from the kiln to avoid the guilt of not stoking it. Your meal is humble. One round of barley bread dense, slightly damp, with a crust that could double as a roofing tile. A handful of olives. A smear of what might be goat cheese, though it has aspirations of being something smellier. And, of course, wine watered down, because you're responsible, but not so watered that you can't forget Augustus the Wobble for a while. You eat slowly, chewing with the practiced patience of someone who's learned to extract flavor from stubborn bread. The olives are better, sharp, salty, and just slippery enough to escape if you're not careful. One lands on the ground and rolls away. You stare after it. Too far. It's gone. Let it live its new life. There's a bowl beside you, one of your own. You're eating from your own work, which sounds romantic until you remember that it's also where you stored leftover slip last week. You think you washed it. Probably. You hope. A bee hovers nearby, drawn either by the cheese or your radiant artisan energy. You swat gently, missing entirely, and decide to let the bee win. It's earned it. Historians still argue whether midday meals for Roman laborers were standardized or haphazard. From experience, you'd bet on the latter. You've had lunch at other potters' workshops. One served salted fish paste on figs. Another insisted on warm wine and nothing else. That man no longer makes pots. Or friends. Halfway through your meal, a shard presses against your thigh. You dig it out from beneath your bench. It's one of yours, broken, discarded, maybe stepped on by the neighbor's goat. It has the faint imprint of a stamp you haven't used in months. You rub your thumb over it. Even broken, it's beautiful in its own stubborn way. You stack it carefully with others in the corner. Not trash. Not yet. Broken pots become roof tiles or paving fragments, or if you're lucky, part of some wealthy merchant's mosaic floor. Recycled beauty. Rome has always been good at that. Back inside, you glance at the drying board. The vessels are stiffening just right, firm enough to hold their shape, soft enough to decorate, which means it's time to fuss over them. You gather your tools, a pointed stylus, a few wooden stamps, a piece of polished bone. Nothing fancy, just enough to leave a mark. You begin with the smallest bowl, dragging the stylus gently around the rim. A simple wave pattern, barely more than a suggestion. Not enough to distract from the form, but enough to whisper, someone cared. Decorating pots is part design, part diplomacy. Too plain, and clients think you're lazy. Too ornate, and they say you're trying too hard. There's a narrow sweet spot, somewhere between function and flair, where Roman aesthetics reside. It's unclear if anyone has ever actually found it. You reach for a stamp carved with a gladiator mid-leap. It's one of your best sellers. Not because it's accurate. His helmet is wildly impractical, but because people like the drama. You press it into the side of a jug. The clay gives with a soft thump. You pull back. Perfect. Next, vines, loops, and the occasional dolphin. Dolphins are in. No one knows why. You suspect it's a kind of maritime peer pressure. Fringe scholars have suggested that some Roman pottery stamps doubled as secret guild marks or religious symbols. You're not sure about that. You just know they take forever to carve and someone always wants one slightly different. You switch to freehand, sketching a meandering line down the curve of a cup. It's soothing. The groove of stylus through clay, the slight resistance, the knowledge that you can always smooth it over and try again. A gentle reminder that nothing is final until the kiln. Outside, a donkey brays. You bray back, not out of rudeness, just habit. The donkey appreciates it, or at least it stops braying. A small win. You move on to the oil lamp base. Here, you go simple. A starburst around the wick hole. Enough to catch the eye, not enough to distract from the flame. You once got fancy with a lamp, and the customer accused it of causing bad dreams. You don't take chances anymore. You pause to wipe your hands on your apron, which is now more art project than clothing. The light has shifted. Afternoon stretches long shadows across the room. You're tired, but the good kind. The kind of tired that smells like dust and success. You step back to admire your work. The pots, each one, stamped, marked, and uniquely imperfect, sit like a tiny city of waiting stories. No two alike. Not really. They hold water, wine, oil, and expectations. They'll travel far across towns, maybe across provinces. Some may survive centuries. Others will shatter tomorrow. That's just how it goes. You scratch your nose with a clay-crusted finger and lean against the doorframe. A warm breeze drifts in, stirring the cloth over the clay mound. Lunch is over. The sun moves on, but the pots stay. For now. The air outside has shifted. No longer the fiery glare of high noon, but the gentler, flatter warmth of early afternoon. Time, as always, stretches and folds strangely in the world of clay. 1 minute you're carving a dolphin into a wine jug, and the next you realize half the days slipped out the door like a cheeky cat. There's still work to be done, of course. Always is. You glance at the firewood pile, or, more accurately, the disappointing suggestion of one. A few scrawny sticks. A log that refuses to split. One piece that somehow grew mold despite being in full sun. Excellent. Time for everyone's favorite midday ritual. Gathering firewood under a sun that has clearly forgotten the concept of mercy. You wrap a cloth around your neck, grab your hat, or what passes for a hat, basically a floppy X sandal, and head toward the scrubby hill beyond the goat pens. The goats eye you as you pass, chewing as if you owe them money. You tip your head in their direction. Respect. They run this street. The wood you're after isn't glamorous. No noble cedar or whispering pine. Just dry branches, twigs, the occasional chunk of olive root if you're lucky. Firewood isn't about majesty, it's about combustion. And not running into snakes. The first arm load comes easy. Low branches snap off with satisfying cracks, and you even find a knotty branch shaped like a ladle. You briefly consider making soup with it. Then you remember your last attempt at cooking and abandon the thought for public safety. As you work, sweat beads along your brow. Your tunic sticks to your back. The sun glares, unblinking. Somewhere, a cicada starts up its buzzy dirge. You whisper threats at it. It does not care. Historians still argue whether individual Roman potters gathered their own kiln fuel or bartered for it from charcoal makers. You gather your own, partly for the control, mostly because your bartering skills are on par with a mildly confused sheep. You carry the first load back, arms straining, legs wobbling, and drop it beside the kiln with a thud. It's not enough. You know this. You always know this. The kiln is a hungry creature, always demanding, never satisfied. Like a bureaucrat with fire. Back out again. The second trip is less fruitful. The good branches are higher up, guarded by thorn bushes and what may or may not be an angry lizard. You hiss at it. It blinks slowly, unimpressed. Still, you manage a decent bundle, tied with a scrap of twine salvaged from an old amphora. On your way back, you see your neighbor struggling with a wheelbarrow full of poorly stacked tiles. He glares at you. You nod sympathetically but do not offer help. There's an unspoken rule among potters. Help when needed, but never before someone asks. Especially if it's that guy. Back in your workshop, you arrange the firewood like a game of hot, stabby Tetris. Long logs for base heat. Smaller twigs for quick ignition. A few weirdly curved pieces for dramatic flair. You don't know. The kiln won't care, but you like the look. A pottery student once asked you why the wood must be arranged so precisely. You told them it was an ancient secret passed down from Etruscan masters. The real reason? You're mildly obsessive, and once had a pot crack from uneven firing and cried about it in a bush for 20 minutes. You pause, wipe your face, and stretch your arms overhead. The sun is angling low now, shadows lengthening across the workshop floor like spilled ink. You've sweat through your tunic, gained a few splinters, and might have inhaled your body weight in sawdust. Still, there's satisfaction in the stack. A good stack means a good fire. A good fire means even heat. Even heat means your pots stand a chance of surviving what comes next. Fringe researchers claim that certain Roman regions held festivals around kiln firings, complete with music and garlands. You've never seen one. But you have seen a guy accidentally toss in a wet log and nearly steam blast his eyebrows off. Same vibe. You look over at your drying pots. They're nearly ready leather hard and firm, edges no longer tacky. Soon they'll be moved to the kiln. But not yet. First, you test the draft. You squat beside the kiln's firebox. Feel the air with your hand. A faint pull. Good. The chimney draws. You crumple some old reed scraps, add a twist of dry olive bark, and set it alight. The flame catches quickly, dancing bright and hungry. You feed it slowly, teasing it to life. The kiln responds with a low, crackling sigh, like a dragon clearing its throat. The heat builds fast, licking at the bricks, curling smoke through the flue. You sit back, hands on your knees, face flushed. It's alive now. No going back. Your neighbor strolls by and nods approvingly at the blaze. "Hope it doesn't crack this time," he says. You smile thinly. You hope he steps in goat droppings. Later, gently. As the fire settles into rhythm, you sit beside it, basking in the radiant warmth and the soft pop of sap in the wood. The work isn't done. It never really is. But for a moment, there's nothing to do but watch. The sun lowers, brushing the rooftops with gold. Smoke curls into the sky. Your clay pots wait, patient and silent. And you? You sit with dirt under your fingernails, sweat on your brow, and a strange, quiet pride humming in your chest. You built this day, one splinter at a time. The pots are ready. The fire is ready. That means it's time for the most delicate and, depending on the humidity and your emotional stability, the most dangerous part of the day, loading the kiln. You approach the drying board with a reverence normally reserved for temples or newborn lambs. Each pot is examined with a potter's eye. Are the rims dry enough? Are there invisible cracks pretending to be innocent? Is that a thumbprint or a curse mark? You decide it's a thumbprint, hopefully yours. You begin with the largest pieces, always the heaviest, always the least cooperative. One by one, you lift them with both hands, pressing the cool weight of the clay against your chest, cradling them like sleepy toddlers who might tantrum at any moment. The kiln gapes open like a waiting mouth. The interior is blackened with history layer upon layer of scorched memories and soot stains from pots that lived, pots that didn't, and one unforgettable experiment involving oyster shells that still smells faintly of bad choices. Inside, you position the pots with obsessive care. This is geometry, ballet, and chess all at once. Nothing must touch. Airflow must be perfect. You crouch, lean, shift, mutter. One jug threatens to tip. You brace it with a shim made from a broken tile. It obeys. For now. Superstition demands that the kiln gods be appeased. Not formally, of course. You're not one of those dramatic potters with incense and chants, but still. You tuck a small offering into the back corner. A coin. A dried olive pit. Once, a single hair from the guildmaster's beard. That last one felt excessive, but you were desperate. Historians still argue whether Roman potters followed consistent loading patterns, or if everyone just hoped for the best and blamed Mercury when things exploded. You lean toward the latter. Though some swear by circular layouts, or tiered stacking, or aligning pots with the stars. You align them by vibes and stability. Next come the medium pieces bowls, plates, oil lamps. These stack a bit, but carefully. Air needs to move, or heat will build unevenly. You've lost whole batches to hot spots. Nothing like pulling out a platter that's half glazed and half ash. Finally, the smallest pieces. These nestle in the gaps like well-behaved children in a crowded cart. One cup wobbles. You wedge it with a sliver of fired scrap. There, safe. You pause to breathe. Sweat drips down your nose. Your legs ache from squatting. Your fingers throb from clutching fragile edges. But the kiln is full. A little too full, maybe. But not dangerously so. Probably. You lower the arched doorstone, sealing the entrance with clay-soaked rags and a confidence you do not entirely possess. You smear slip around the gaps, smoothing edges until the kiln looks like a quiet, content oven full of secrets. Now comes the dance. You light the fire in earnest, feeding in thicker branches, coaxing the temperature upward. Slowly. Too fast, and the pots will crack. Too slow, and you'll be here until Jupiter rises. The flames flicker, warming your face. You sit cross-legged, watching the first tendrils of smoke curl through the vent. Your workshop smells of burning olive wood, clay, and the faintest tang of anxiety. You grab your smoke mirror, a polished piece of bronze, darkened at the edges. You angle it toward the flue. The smoke is pale now, wispy. You nod. That's good. As it darkens, you'll know the temperature's rising. A fly lands on your knee. You ignore it. It leaves. Respect. You sip from your water skin, which tastes faintly of rosemary and disappointment. The fire cracks. A distant donkey brays. The kiln huffs like a lazy lion, slowly waking. Your neighbor leans over the wall. "You trying the double stack method again?" he asks. You grunt. He snorts. Brave. You think of telling him it's not bravery, it's lack of space. But instead, you nod like a sage and poke the fire. Let him think you're experimenting. It sounds more impressive than panicked guesswork. Fringe scholars claim that some Roman potters timed their firings by watching the stars. You use a more modern system. The feel of your face method. If your eyebrows start sweating, the fire's too hot. If you can sit comfortably, it's not hot enough. If you hear popping and smell heartbreak, too late. You adjust the wood, shifting longer logs into place. The flames flare, licking up the sides. The kiln glows faintly. You watch, quiet. The process is long. Hours. You don't leave. You can't. A kiln left unsupervised is like a toddler with a torch. You stretch, shift, turn the logs, check the mirror, listen to the fire. It's alive now. Moving, breathing, devouring fuel with a hunger that never seems satisfied. At one point, you hear something, maybe a crack, maybe a pop. You freeze. Listen. Wait. Nothing follows. Just the usual snapping of twigs and the occasional whisper of wind through the doorway. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe. The sun is fading. Shadows stretch across the floor. Your workshop glows from within, the kiln casting amber light onto the walls, making everything look warmer, richer, almost sacred. You sit back on your heels, sweaty, tired, sore, and entirely calm. You've done this dozens of times. You've lost pots. You've saved them. You've cursed at gods and whispered thanks to fire. This part, this balance between destruction and creation is why you stay, because when it works, it's magic. And when it doesn't, well, you always need more shards. You're not going anywhere tonight. Once the kiln is lit and the fire fully committed to its slow and glorious burn, it becomes a night-long vigil. No skipping off to the tavern, no sneaking in a nap, no playing dice with the baker's apprentice. Again. You are now the smoke watcher, that solemn, slightly ash-covered figure hunched near the firebox, eyes glazed, eyelids drooping, and pants permanently dusted with soot. You settle into your watching stool, which is less a stool and more a leftover crate with aspirations. It groans under your weight. You groan back. Mutual respect. Before you, the kiln breathes. The flames inside aren't leaping anymore. They're dancing, measured, focused. The heat pulses outward in steady waves, wrapping the workshop in a drowsy warmth. It's like sitting beside a giant, purring beast, if the beast occasionally coughed up smoke and demanded more kindling. You poke the fire again, just to remind it you're in charge. It flares in protest. You accept the terms of your partnership. Night comes quickly now. The village quiets. One by one, the voices fall away. A shutter bangs gently. A dog sighs in its sleep. Even the frogs seem to whisper. You listen for the smoke. Not just watch, listen. There's a tone to it, a voice. Pale smoke whispers. Dark smoke hums. Bitter smoke complains. You get to know it after years. Tonight, the smoke is smooth, cooperative, slightly toasted, like it's had a long day too. You check the mirror again. A thin dark plume twirls upward from the chimney. Good. Not too fast, not too slow. You adjust the vents. Just a touch, and the plume responds, curling like a lazy question mark. Historians still argue whether night shifts like this were communal events or lonesome rituals. You've seen both. Some kilns run with teams, chatter, and shared bread. Yours, solitary, by choice. Too many cooks ruin the fire. Besides, you've grown fond of these quiet hours. Just you, the fire, and the random philosophical thoughts that start to creep in after dark. Like, why do spoons never get the same respect as amphorae? Or, has anyone actually seen a potter smile during firing? You sip from your water skin, still rosemary-ish, still disappointing. A rustle from the wall. You freeze. Could be a rat. Could be a cat. Could be that same bold mouse who's been stealing olive pits for months. You whisper a warning into the dark. The rustling stops. Fair enough. Every now and then, you rise to stretch. You roll your shoulders, flex your knees, restack a few logs, feed the flame. But mostly, you wait. You remember your old mentor once said, "Firing pots is like courting a ghost. It might smile back, or it might drop your heart into ashes." At the time, you thought he was being poetic. Now you realize he was just sleep-deprived and deeply cranky. The first blush of dawn creeps across the horizon like a sleepy secret. Pale pink stretches over the rooftops, softening the soot-streaked tiles and casting long shadows behind the kiln. You blink against the light, eyes grainy from too little sleep and too much smoke. The kiln is still warm, humming low like it's dreaming. The fire has died to embers, the logs long gone, replaced by glowing coal and a silence that feels earned. You press your palm near the side, hot but not searing. Good. You'll wait a little longer before opening it. Rush the reveal, and the whole batch could shatter from thermal shock. You've made that mistake once, It still haunts you in the form of oddly shaped coasters. You rise slowly, every joint making its own personal complaint. Your back cracks like dried bark. Your knees creak. Even your toes feel dusty. But there's something sacred about this moment. You and the kiln. No crowd, no chatter, just the stillness before revelation. Historians still argue whether Roman potters opened their kilns at dawn for symbolic reasons, or simply because that's when they were too tired to wait any longer. You fall firmly into the second camp. Though, you admit, the sunrise does make the soot look dramatic. You begin chipping away the clay seals around the kiln's mouth. The outer doorstone is still warm, and the edges give reluctantly under your chisel. A puff of warm air exhales through the first crack. It smells of smoke, stone, and faintly of bread? No, that's probably your imagination. Or your neighbor's breakfast. With a grunt, you ease the stone aside. Inside, a dim red-orange glow still lingers across the stacked rows of pots. Some are faintly visible, others cloaked in shadow. You pause, half expecting them to blink at you. This is the part where you pray. Not out loud, of course. That would be melodramatic. But inside, you offer a hopeful hum to every deity, spirit, and superstition you've ever overheard. Minerva, Vulcan, the ghost of that one potter who swore by goose-feather timing. Anyone listening? You reach in slowly, testing the temperature. It's warm, but manageable. Carefully, one by one, you begin to remove the pots. The first bowl comes out perfect. Smooth, even tone, no warping. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Success, or at least start of success. The second, also good. A slightly richer hue than expected, probably due to the uneven log you tossed in after the mouse incident. No cracks, no bubbles. You're cautiously triumphant. Then comes number 3, you don't even need to touch it. You can see it from the mouth of the kiln. A plate, now 2 plates, or, more accurately, a plate and a collection of fragments still pretending to be whole. A perfect, clean split. Just enough to make it worthless, but not quite dramatic enough to throw. You sigh. It happens. You set the broken piece aside on the maybe art later shelf. You'll probably forget about it until it falls off and shatters properly. Poetic. Back to the kiln. You remove each pot like a relic. Some warm and flawless. Others bear faint scorch marks or awkward bulges. One has what looks like a lizard toe print on it. You don't want to know. Fringe scholars claim that ancient kilns were haunted by the spirits of failed pottery. You felt that. Not ghostly moans, but the creeping sensation that your next piece is already planning its betrayal. Still, the batch is mostly good. A few cracks, one irreparable lid, but several beautiful bowls. 2 perfectly matched jars. An oil lamp that might be your best work this week. You turn it in your hands, admiring the soft gleam of the glaze, the smooth lines, the crisp stamp. You smile. It's a small victory, but you'll take it. You arrange the finished pieces on the shelf near the door, letting the sunlight catch them. They glow, quiet, dignified, proud. Each one carrying hours of labor, patience, and sheer dumb luck. A breeze stirs the ash around your feet. The workshop is warming up again. Outside, the village is waking. You hear the low rumble of a cart, the distant clang of a bell, the unmistakable sound of someone loudly regretting wine. You stretch, crack your neck, and pour a little water into a chipped cup. Your reward. It tastes like smoke and glory. As you tidy the kiln, scraping out ash and stacking wood for the next burn, a child pokes their head through the door. "Did it work?" they ask, wide-eyed. You nod. Mostly, they grin, toss you a fig, and run off. It's overripe. You eat it anyway. You glance at the shelf again. Not perfect, but close. And more than enough, the pots sit, cooling in the sun, waiting for their next lives. Some will hold wine. Others will hold pickled fish. A few will likely hold disappointment when they break within a week, but for now, they hold light, and silence, and a sliver of your soul. You sweep the floor, slowly, deliberately, another firing behind you. Another batch survived. You made it. Again. The fire is out. The kiln is cooling. The pots are cooling. You are cooling, though, honestly, it'll take another 3 washings to get the soot out of your ears, which means it's barter day. Not market day, mind you. That's for the bakers and fishmongers and sandal polishers, shouting over each other like seagulls with attitude problems. Barter day is more intimate, less chaotic. You don't set up a stall with a charming smile and a sales pitch. You simply carry your pots around like a traveling hope merchant and try to trade them for something useful, or at the very least, edible. You load your best pieces into a padded crate, really just an old grain box with a well-meaning cloth stuffed inside, and tie it shut with a fraying rope you've knotted and re-knotted for 5 years. You nod to the gods, or the lizard in the corner, hard to say, and step out into the morning sun. First stop, the fish guy. His name's Milo, and he always smells like smoked eel, even when he swears he doesn't. He likes your mugs, particularly the ones with the tiny fish carved along the rims. He says they make his garum look fancy. You don't argue. Anyone who gives you pickled herring in exchange for slightly uneven ceramics is a friend. You swap 3 cups for a small jar of smoked mackerel, a half loaf of day-old bread, and a wink that could curdle yogurt. You thank him, suppress a shiver, and move on. Next, the oil vendor. She's a sharp-eyed woman with a voice like an offended crow and the best olive oil this side of the forum. She inspects your amphora with the practiced scrutiny of someone who's seen too many pots and not enough quality. She taps the rim, checks the seal, sniffs the interior. Then she shrugs. Fine, she mutters, tossing you a half measure of oil and 1 slightly cracked cheese round. It's her way of saying she's impressed. Probably. You pack your goods carefully. The oil leaks a little. The cheese smells aggressive. You consider both victories. Historians still argue whether Roman artisans preferred currency or barter. You prefer whatever gets you dinner and doesn't involve haggling with someone who thinks their turnips are worth more than your week's labor. You wander past other traders, one with dyed fabrics, another with ceramic beads shaped like birds. They all look like ducks, but no one says it. You resist temptation. You've made that mistake before, trading a good vase for a carved hair comb that snapped in half the moment you sneezed. At the far end of the street, under a faded awning, sits the Eggman. He's ancient, possibly fossilized. His stall smells like straw and quiet judgment. You offer him a pair of lamp bases with symmetrical wicks. He stares at them, then at you, then back at them. Too pretty, he says. Too useful, you reply. He grunts, spits into the dirt, and hands you 4 eggs and a feather. You take them. It's more than you expected. The feather tickles your nose. You sneeze. The Eggman does not flinch. Back through the village now, crate half empty, arms slightly fuller. You pass by a child drawing in the dust with a stick. They're sketching what appears to be a horse, a gladiator, and a blob. You suspect the blob is a pot. You nod approvingly. Art. Someone calls your name. You turn. It's Lucius, the local poet who hasn't written a poem in years, but insists he's between epics. He wants a plate, offers you a poem in return. You decline. Last time, the poem was about mildew and betrayal. You're still confused. Fringe scholars have theorized that artisans like you used barter as a subtle social web, to secure not just goods but influence, information, even affection. You think it's mostly about cheese. But sure, influence too. You stop by the well to drink and catch your breath. Two women gossip nearby. You learn that someone's cousin is marrying someone's brother and that someone else might be pregnant with someone else's baker. It's hard to keep track. You nod politely and pretend not to eavesdrop. By late morning, your crate is empty. The fish is in your pouch, the oil is in a reused amphora, the cheese is wrapped in waxed cloth, and the eggs are tucked into your shirt like mildly aggressive stones. Success. You head home, not triumphant, but satisfied. You traded mud for meals, shape for sustenance. It's a fair deal. Back at your workshop, you unpack your goods. The mackerel is starting to sweat. You wrap it tighter. The cheese is sweating too. You debate eating it immediately. Then you hear a small crash. You spin. A jug, freshly fired, lies on the floor, cracked. Not shattered. Just enough to make your stomach sink. You sigh, then shrug. Barter day giveth. Barter day taketh away. You'll fix it later. For now, you sit on your stool, tear a bite from the bread, and chew slowly. It's dry, but honest, like your best pots. Outside, the village buzzes softly. Somewhere, someone is cursing over broken tiles. Somewhere else, a pot cracks in the sun. The day slows. Not in the lazy, hammock-swaying sort of way, more in the your back will seize if you bend down, again kind of way. After barter, after fire, after hauling and haggling, and heartbreak over one more cracked jug, the only thing left is what every good Roman artisan knows to expect: gossip, gods, and the quiet hum of the guild's whispers. You're back in your workshop, now reorganized with the weary precision of someone who's knocked over one too many stacks of drying tiles. The shelves are newly populated, some with traded goods, others with fresh fire-kissed pots. You move slowly, checking for hairline cracks, slight warps, or the unmistakable pockmarks of a rogue air bubble. Each surviving piece is a tiny miracle. But as the clinking of pottery fades into background noise, your ears catch something else. Murmurs. It starts with the neighbor's apprentice dropping off a note. Well, a note if you consider a shard of pottery with 3 awkward scratches on it a note. You frown at it, flip it over. Ah, yes, the secret language of the guild. Sort of like Morse code, but somehow more passive-aggressive. It means meeting, sunset, usual spot, bring questions. You sigh. Questions. You always have questions. Mostly rhetorical, like, why did my best bowl explode? Or, how come the guy who stamps dolphins upside down keeps getting commissions? But the guild wants different questions. One's about quotas. Pricing. Who's been smuggling Greek imports through the back alley by the dye merchant? You tuck the shard into your sash. Sunset's still a few hours off. So, you get back to work, but the whispers don't leave. Outside, 2 older potters are talking too loudly near the well. One says someone's been stealing templates. Another insists the kiln in the west yard is cursed. You roll your eyes. Every time someone ruins a batch, suddenly it's a ghost or a jealous demigod. No one ever admits they stacked the firewood wrong. You grab a small cup and start smoothing the glaze edge with a cloth. Your hands work automatically, but your ears are focused. You hear names, a suggestion of sabotage, a reference to a new formula someone's keeping secret. Historians still argue whether Roman trade guilds were benevolent support systems or elite gatekeepers. You believe the truth lives somewhere in the middle, under a pile of kiln ash and polite bribes. You once tried skipping a guild meeting. You woke up the next morning to find all your best clay mysteriously relocated to a goat pen. You got the message. Still, it's not all conniving and competition. There's camaraderie, too. After all, you all live in the same dust, breathe the same smoke, curse the same weather. You remember one night, years ago, when a potter's roof collapsed in a summer storm. The next morning, without a word, 6 others showed up, wood, nails, and clay in hand. The roof was rebuilt before midday. No one asked for thanks. That's just how it works. You feud with the living, but honor the craft. The pot in your hands has dried enough to finish. You etch your mark along the base, your signature, a subtle swirl like a spinning wheel. Nothing flashy. No need. The people who matter will recognize it. The rest will just think it's decorative. You set the pot aside and glance at the shadow stretching across your doorway. Sunset creeps closer. Time to tidy up and prepare for the guild gathering, which you fondly refer to as the ceramic summit of mild disappointments. You dust yourself off. Not entirely, just enough to look less like a runaway chimney, and grab your pouch. A few shards with notes, a sealed slip of questions you'll pretend are just inquiries and not thinly veiled complaints. You sling your cloak over one shoulder and head out. The guild meeting is held at the edge of the village, beneath a crumbling column that once belonged to a temple, or maybe a bathhouse. No one remembers. You suspect even the gods forgot. Everyone is already gathered. About 15 of you. Some lean on walking sticks. Others still have wet slip on their arms. One is loudly chewing what might be roasted figs. The meeting begins with the usual. Nods, muttered greetings, a few pointed glares exchanged between rival kilners. Then come the updates. Someone mentions a new regulation about amphora neck width. You groan inwardly. Another wants to formalize a list of approved decorative motifs. You try not to laugh. Someone else brings up the dolphins again. And then the real topic. Someone's been undercutting. The silence that follows is thick as unfired clay. You already know what's coming. Someone selling finished pieces at prices so low, the rest of you look like con artists. You're not surprised. Times are tight, and desperation makes fools of us all. But still, it stings. The village grows quiet again, as the last whispers of the guild meeting fade into the dusk. You walk home slowly, feet dragging in the dirt, your satchel heavier with notes, olives, and just a bit of resentment. There's something oddly comforting about it all. The routine drama, the faint conspiracies, the smell of roasted onions lingering in the air from someone's dinner. Potters might squabble, but the clay always forgives. You reach your workshop as the sky shifts from plum to ink. You light a small oil lamp, one of yours of course, and its warm glow spills across the floor, dancing across the shelves, the discarded tools, and the growing pile of shards. Ah yes, the shards. Every potter has them. Some hide theirs in neat piles behind the kiln. Others pretend not to notice when one slips off a drying board. But not you. You keep them all. Cracked bowls, warped lids, overfired cups, and plates that turned into abstract art during the cooling phase. You sit beside the pile, cross-legged, and start sorting. There's a plate with a beautiful rim and a crater in the center like it tried to swallow itself. A cup with perfect glazing on one side and what appears to be a thumbprint smudged across a dolphin. You sigh. That one hurt. You really liked the dolphin. You separate them into 3 stacks. Maybe repairable, definitely not, and emotional damage. Historians still argue whether Roman potters intentionally recycled broken wares into new forms or merely used them as landfill. You do a bit of both: drainage tiles, mosaics. Occasionally, you chip one down to serve as a roof shingle. Once you framed a cracked bowl and called it a metaphor. No one bought it, but the goats seemed moved. You pick up a jagged handle from a ruined jug, one you dropped yourself last week in a fit of optimism. You turn it over in your hands. It feels not like failure, but like memory. A rough draft in fired earth. Outside, a neighbor calls to their child. The goats complain. Somewhere, a dog barks at absolutely nothing and everything. You hum under your breath, not quite a tune, just a rhythm that matches the quiet scrape of clay against clay. Then, from the maybe repairable pile, you spot it. A bowl. Slight crack down one side. The glazing's still intact. You run your fingers along the break. Smooth. Clean, like it wants to heal. You nod to yourself and rise. You grab your slip, thicker now, from yesterday's leftovers, and your repair brush. Carefully, you press the paste into the crack, binding the halves like sutures on wounded pottery. Then a gentle wrap of cloth to keep pressure. It will take time. Maybe it'll hold, maybe not. But it deserves a second chance. You glance around your workshop. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that settles deep in your bones. A shelf creaks. The oil lamp flickers. Clay dust drifts through the air, catching light like fireflies. You sit again, this time on your stool. The one that's been with you longer than most friendships. It leans slightly to the left now, just like you. You pull out a broken shard with a faint sunburst etched along its curve. A design you haven't used in years. You trace it with your thumb, remembering the client who requested it. Some poet with wild hair and too many opinions. He paid late. The pot broke anyway. But the design stuck. You set the shard aside and reach for a flat tile. You begin arranging pieces, some broken beyond repair, others just fractured enough to fit. A new pattern forms, swirls, sharp lines, uneven colors. It's not a bowl, it's not a jug, it's something. A mosaic? A story? A distraction? Hard to say. Fringe researchers suggest that ancient potters often embedded broken shards into public pathways or walls as decoration or warnings. You like that idea. Walk on our mistakes. Let them carry you forward. You lose yourself in the arrangement, clay fragments clicking into place like a soft-spoken puzzle. Hours pass without notice. When you finally stop, your fingers are gray and your eyes are heavy. You step back. It's nothing. And it's beautiful. A jagged little mess that catches the lamplight and winks back at you. You'll mount it above the kiln. Maybe add more next time something breaks. Which, let's be honest, will probably be tomorrow. You clean your hands in the basin by the door. Cold water, slick with clay. The sediment settles around your nails. You don't bother scrubbing it out. It belongs there. One last sweep of the workshop. One last glance at the new pots drying on the board. And then your hand brushes the little bowl you repaired earlier. Still whole. For now. You smile. Then you whisper. Just loud enough for the gods. Or maybe just the kiln. Next batch will be better. And you believe it, even if it won't be. The sun is back. Again. Because of course it is. Roman time doesn't stop, and neither does the to-do list of a potter. Your knees creak as you rise from your mat, a straw-filled sack that has seen more regrets than dreams. You rub the sleep from your eyes and stretch, already feeling the echo of yesterday's work humming through your arms. You shuffle outside and look around. The world is in order. The goats are arguing. The baker is shouting. A child is using an amphora as a hat. Normal. You eat a bit of cheese from last night. It's taken on a more philosophical consistency, but edible is a spectrum, and you've developed immunity to most forms of hard dairy. Today is repair day. Or, if we're being honest, look at all the things that cracked while you blinked day. You know this drill well. Pottery isn't about perfection. It's about perseverance. You don't just make, you remake, constantly. You gather the broken pieces from the maybe shelf. A handle here, a warped rim there. One particularly dramatic fracture that looks like it gave up halfway through a dinner party. You inspect each piece with your usual combination of hope and resignation. Some are salvageable. Some are decorative. Some are just stories. You start with the easiest fix, a bowl split clean in two, a clear candidate for slip patching. You mix the thick clay paste, coat the edges, press gently, then bind with cloth strips like bandages. You whisper encouragement to it. It doesn't respond, but you pretend it does. Historians still argue whether repaired Roman pottery carried the same value as new. You argue with historians. Repaired pots tell better stories. Look, you want to say, this one exploded in the kiln, then lived to serve soup another day. That's resilience. That's Roman. You place the bandaged bowl on a shelf marked optimism. Next up, a plate with one half missing and a glaze that looks like sunburn. Beyond repair, but maybe a good base for a new tile in your slowly growing mosaic. You trace the remaining pattern with your finger before setting it aside. The crack lines look almost elegant, like the wrinkles on your grandmother's hands. Useful beauty. Then there's the jug. You sigh. You know the jug. It's been following you for weeks. A sturdy piece that developed a long, slow crack down the side like it's contemplating retirement. You keep thinking it'll hold out. But today, you decide. It's time. You remove the stamp, your mark, so it can be reused. A little clay. A little press. A reminder that part of this jug will live again. Then you ceremoniously snap the jug the rest of the way and toss it into the shard bin. No guilt, just closure. Fringe scholars theorize some potters held minor funerals for their broken wares. You don't go that far. But you do pat the shard pile now and then. Respect. Next, you sort through the accidental twins. 2 bowls meant to match. One shrunk more than expected. Now they're cousins. You scratch a design onto the smaller one, a vine motif with curling leaves. Not to disguise the size, just to give it a reason to be different. Then you stack them with care. Someone will buy them. Probably someone with mismatched sandals. You take a break. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because you've reached that phase of the day where everything starts to blur. You sip water. It tastes faintly of yesterday's cheese. You stare at your mosaic in progress. You consider adding a dolphin. A knock on the door. It's Cassius, the glass worker. He holds a bundle wrapped in linen and a sheepish look. "Dropped another one," he mutters. You open the linen. A beautiful little bottle, now with a spiderweb crack spiraling across its base. Beyond your help. You nod, offer him a bowl in trade. Not the same, he says, but it'll do. You both know he'll try to glue the bottle with sap and pretend it never happened. You admire the optimism. These trades are unofficial, off the record, not guild-sanctioned, but they matter. You fix. They remember. One day, when your glaze fails, someone like Cassius will show up with resin and a quiet smile. Back at your table, you begin disassembling yesterday's repair that didn't hold. The bowl you thought had healed now sits in two slightly more disappointed halves. You try not to take it personally. You file it away under lessons. Historians still argue whether potters kept records of their failures. You don't need records. Your hands remember. Every cracked lip, every failed double stack, every explosion that sent a shard whizzing past your ear like a vengeful wasp. But for each failure, there's a pot that held, a lid that fit, a curve that dried just right. You finish the day with a single teacup, one you've been avoiding. The handle popped off during cooling. You'd cursed it, then forgotten it, then remembered it again during a particularly annoying guild debate. Today you decide to fix it. The next morning begins with a rare and oddly luxurious silence. No goats bickering outside, no child shrieking about his missing tunic, no apprentice knocking over a pile of roof tiles with that very tunic. Just you, your half mug of wine water, and the sound of your own knees cracking like thin ice under a chariot. Today's plan is simple. Not light, not easy, but simple. You need to take stock. What do you have? What have you lost? And what's now just living rent-free in your shard pile? You pull out your ledger. It's more wishful thinking than record-keeping. A cracked tablet covered in half-legible marks, guesses, and a crude drawing of a cat labeled "Not Important." You don't even have a cat. You sit on your stool, still leaning left, still dependable, and begin tallying. 1 jug for vinegar. 4 bowls, 2 matching, 1 optimistic, 1 decorative. 3 amphorae, 2 sold, 1 still drying. 7 cups, though 2 have questionable rims. 1 experimental oil lamp that looks suspiciously like a startled snail. You stare at it for a moment. You're proud, but you're not sure why. Your latest repair sits proudly on the shelf. The teacup with the leather-tied handle. It held through the night. The handle still droops a little, but now you're calling it a design flourish. That's branding. You scratch another note onto the tablet and try to remember what else is pending. Oh, right. The tile order from the bathhouse. They wanted flat slabs, plain edges, and nothing fancy, which, in pottery terms, translates to the most boring thing you'll ever make. But they're paying in olives and salt, so smile and make rectangles. You sigh and head to your clay bin. The slip on top has begun to form a skin. You peel it away with the practiced efficiency of someone who's done this too many times. The clay beneath is just right, cool, smooth, compliant. You roll a chunk into a slab and begin shaping tiles. Tile work is different from throwing. Less flair, more math. You measure the length by finger width, the depth by thumb press, the corners by eyeball and hope. It's repetitive, predictable. Honestly, kind of relaxing. Historians still argue whether Roman bathhouse tiles were standardized by region or just vaguely squarish. You've worked with both. You prefer vague. The squares make you nervous. You finish the first batch, lay them out to dry, and begin again. The rhythm is pleasant. Wet clay, press, smooth, set, repeat. Your mind drifts. You think about the neighbors. One is building a second kiln, convinced it'll give him more artistic freedom, which you suspect is code for, "I burned down the first one." Another's started teaching her daughter the trade, and you envy that. A second set of hands, and someone to blame when a cup tips over. You remember when you first started, young, stubborn, allergic to ash. Your first piece collapsed on the wheel and launched itself across the room. You kept the shard. You still have it. It holds paper scraps now. You glance toward the back shelf. There it is, curved, incomplete, beautiful in its failure. You smile at it. Fringe archaeologists believe Roman potters sometimes signed their best work. You sign all your work, not because it's the best, but because you were there. That counts for something. You wipe your hands on your apron, which has transitioned from functional to abstract art. The sun filters through the door, casting angled lines across your drying board. You count the tiles again. 12. You need 30. You try not to groan. You step outside for air. The breeze smells like thyme and wet dust. Somewhere, someone is hammering. A child giggles. You spot an apprentice chasing a chicken with a bucket. The chicken is winning. You sit on the bench, stretch your back, and chew on a piece of dried fig. It's surprisingly good. Or maybe you're just hungry enough that texture no longer matters. Then you hear it. A thud. From inside. You freeze. You know that sound. The sound of something falling. Something clay. You rush back in. A bowl. Not new, not critical, but still. A bowl. On the floor. In two pieces. You sigh. Not in anger. Not anymore. Just a long, low exhale of understanding. You kneel. Pick it up. One half is clean. The other has a chip. You run your finger along the break. It's not sharp. You've had worse. You set the halves on the bench, side by side. You'll repair it later. Maybe turn it into a planter, or a scoop for grain, or just something to set your tools in. Broken doesn't mean useless. You return to the tiles, more rolling, more smoothing. You start humming. Not a song exactly, just the cadence of labor. Your body knows it better than your mind. By mid-afternoon, your shoulders ache, your fingers are sore, and your tile count is 25. You stop there. The bathhouse won't notice, and if they do, you'll offer a free jar lid and call it a gift with purchase. The sun has dipped beneath the rooftops, casting a long amber hue over the village. Your workshop is awash in shadow now, the last rays of light slipping across your shelves, catching on the gentle curves of newly dried pots and glinting faintly off the glaze of a cup that miraculously didn't warp. It's cleanup time, the quietest, slowest ritual of all. You begin with the wheel. Even though you haven't spun it today, dust has settled on the stone like gossip. You wipe it with a damp cloth, tracing your fingers along the familiar rings. Each groove holds stories, some about success, some about sudden collapse, all about you. You move on to the benches, crumbs of clay, flaked slip, old brush hairs, one suspicious olive pit. These are the remains of the day. You sweep them into your palm, drop them into the shard bin, and promise yourself you'll sort it later. You won't. But the promise feels nice. Next, the tools. You line them up on the shelf. Styluses, sponges, loop tools, brushes with names like the stubborn one and the traitor. One still has yesterday's glaze crusted onto it. You consider cleaning it properly. Then you just sigh and flick it semi-clean. It's a small rebellion, a sleepy one. You check the drying pots. One wobbles. You nudge it gently, like you're tucking in a child. Another has attracted a curious bug. You blow it off and whisper, "Not today." Historians still argue whether Roman potters performed end-of-day rituals. Some suggest prayers, others songs, others just muttered curses. You offer a mix, a mumbled thanks to Minerva, a brief grumble at Mercury, you're still blaming him for that cracked lid, and a small smile at your own reflection in the glaze of a finished bowl. You wash your hands in the basin by the door. The water is cool, edged with clay. No matter how long you scrub, the stain stays. A faint gray beneath your fingernails, a shadow across your palms. The permanent tattoo of your trade. You dry them on a rag so worn it has no dry spot left. You use it anyway. Outside, the village is winding down. Someone's singing, badly. A donkey lets out one last, defiant bray. A breeze carries the scent of hearth smoke and roasted barley. The stars begin to wink into place, one by one, like shy potters showing their first mugs. You lean against the door frame, shoulders heavy, feet sore. You watch as your kiln, now fully cooled, stands silent, like an old friend who said all they need to. You tap it gently on the side, not for luck, just thanks. Inside, the shelves are full, some pieces perfect, some flawed, all yours. Every curve a decision, every chip a lesson, every handle a risk. Fringe scholars speculate that some potters inscribed secret messages into the bases of their wares. You've done it once or twice. A name, a date. One cup simply says, "Still here." You wonder who might find it, centuries from now, and whether they'll feel what you feel now. Not pride, not exactly. Something softer, quieter, continuity. You blow out the lamp. The flame dies with a whisper. The workshop dims, shadows stretching like tired fingers. You walk slowly to your mat, stretch out your legs, and feel the day finally lift. Your back protests, your knees mutter, but your heart feels like clay fresh off the wheel, warm, centered, full of possibility. You close your eyes. You've survived another day in dust and fire. And tomorrow, the wheel will spin again. Let it all fall away now. The fire has cooled. The clay rests in silence. The wheel stands still in the dark, no longer spinning, no longer demanding. You've done enough for today, more than enough. Breathe slowly. Feel the ache in your shoulders soften. Let your hands go limp at your sides, no longer gripping handles or carving lines. You are just breath now, just warmth and softness beneath a blanket of night. Outside, the stars scatter like broken glaze, imperfections turned beautiful. The goats have stopped arguing. Even the frogs seem to have called a truce. It's quiet in the village, quiet in your bones. Your workshop, once so full of noise and mess, is peaceful. The shards are tucked away. The pots are sleeping. And you are dissolving into the stillness. There is nothing to fix, nothing to plan, nothing to knead or fire or haul or haggle. Just rest. Let the day's failures drift off like dust in sunlight. Let the victories settle gently on your chest, warm and weightless. You've shaped something from nothing. You've made beauty from mud. That's enough. Now, close your eyes. Picture the kiln, glowing faintly in the night. Picture your pots, whole and cracked, sitting side by side on the shelf like old friends. You're part of that story now, quiet, enduring, undeniably real. Sleep well, sleepy potter. You've earned it.